Well, hello and welcome to an update on the Quincy City Hall renovation project. I'm Joe Catalano, right in front of Old City Hall, and we're joined today by architect Jim Edwards of Holmes and Edwards Architects, and also Scott Southwick is here from NASA Construction. They're going to take us on a little tour of Old City Hall, see what progress has been made and where we're going in the future. So we look forward to that. Hope you'll come along and join us. So here we are just inside the entrance of Old City Hall, and as you can see, it looks completely different than the last time you were probably inside here. So Jim, you've taken it right back to the old granite.
Yes, we have, Joe. We are probably 80% completed in the demolition phase. I don't know if we saw originally on the outside of the building, but this is Scott Southwick, who is the General Superintendent for NASA Construction. Scott's in charge of all of what's going on inside this building, so I'm sure he can chip in and help us out with some of the commentary. But yes, we've taken it back to a view that hasn't been seen in approximately 170 years when this building was initially constructed, 1844. So here we are. We're in the, as I say, the demolition phase. We are in the process of stripping out all the finishes. And we are now in the work phase entails underpinning the existing foundations, because we are lowering the floor level in the basement to allow for certain new structures to be installed, and also for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning to occur in ceilings and in floors. And that means that the floor system has to be lowered. All the floor framing will be changed, and after that, we start to get to work rebuilding this edifice, this handsome edifice. And Scott, would you care to make a comment about the shoring towers and some of the work that's going on right now in this?
Yeah, basically what we're doing is we're shoring the building up so that when we pull the diaphragm of the building apart and have a complete open shell, it maintains the integrity of the outside wall so it stays intact. And the underpinning, like Jim said, is a very critical part of the job, so that as we lower the slab, we can stabilize the foundation.
Are there any special concerns, Scott, with a building of this age that you have to be aware of when you're in this particular phase?
Yeah, it's actually very specific, and you got to work very closely with the architect and engineers and the trades so that we make sure that we don't have any issues as we're doing the demolition and then the rebuild also. So it's pretty integral.
Yeah. Have you ever done a project like this before?
I have. I've done quite a few historic renovations.
Yeah. What is it that was most surprising so far in this process for you?
You know, there's a lot of surprises with any renovation, but again, the team were handling them very quickly and decisively, so keeping the costs at a minimum. But you know, it's the stonework is the big issue. We got 2 ice of granite here that we're trying to maintain together, and we found that when it was originally built in 1844, there was 2 different contractors, so there's a little bit of overlap of work and some of the deficiencies, if you will, that we're finding that we're addressing. Curious,
do you have any of the original paperwork, blueprints or plans or anything from when it was first built?
I don't have any of those.
And Joe, just so that you know, when we did our original research on this building, we went over to Mass Historic over at UMass Boston, and we researched their records as best we could, and we really found not too much. The earliest drawings that we found were renovations that took place in the 1920s, so there were no drawings of this building that we were able to find. And too bad, but we couldn't find them.
Will any of the original structure remain when this project is completed?
Yes, we're working to maintain as much of it as we possibly can, but a lot of what was installed originally has been compromised through any number of renovations that have taken place in here. So joists have been cut off and compromised. Main bearing beams have been burned and also interrupted and modified through the years. So while we're going to try to maintain as much of it as we can, it will absolutely have to be changed over to today's structural standards and made safe. So that's going to happen.
Yeah. Scott, from your part as general foreman on this project, obviously safety is always a prime concern, certainly. Any specific precautions that you're taking for this project to make sure your workers don't get harmed?
Well, we make sure we pre-con all the trades before they start their work, so we can make sure we're all running in the same direction and make sure the safety's up to snuff, and make sure we have the workforce ready to go home in the same condition they've come in. So yeah, safety is very, very, very important.
what are some of the major challenges of bringing, today's 21st century technology into a building from decades ago?
There's a lot of challenges, but with the accurate drawings that we have with Jim and his team, that they seem to all have been, most of them addressed except for a latent condition. But yeah, it's been very good.
Yeah. Are you running on time right now?
We are running right where we want to be on the schedule. Yep.
Very good. Can we see some more?
Joe, I was just going to say, Joe, that when we talk about some of this floor framing systems having to be removed and modified and supplemented to today's standards, I want Scott maybe to talk a little bit about these shoring towers. But these shoring towers are installed, and you can see how they're braced against the exterior walls, because we do not, that's one of the precautions that you might have been referring to when you were talking to Scott about what kind of safety precautions you take. But we are trying to maintain the structural integrity of the building through these temporary shoring towers while the wood framing is being addressed, and going to be taken out and supplemented, as I said. So, do you want to say how that works a little bit, Scott?
Yeah, basically what we just do is we tie to the outside wall, and we keep a diaphragm so all four walls are tied together so that they work in unison, so that when we do take the core floors out to replace them, that the building stays intact.
Mm-hmm. Well, are you actually raising the building itself at all? Or?
We're not raising it.
Okay.
We're actually lowering the lower floor so we have headroom for the mechanicals.
Right. So in that process, you have to make sure the foundation stays intact.
Right, and that's the underpinning process.
Right. Okay. Are we able to get to other parts of the building, maybe, Jim?
Sure. Let's take a look.
All right.
I'm happy to.
All right, let's take a look.
The original stairway to the council chamber was a center stair that just came up from the street or sidewalk level right to the second floor. This stairway that you see over on the left was installed in approximately the turn of the last century. And when it was installed, it was actually installed as a double staircase that was on either side. It was much more grand than what you see. It came around in two sections and came to a landing at the above and then ascended to the council chamber. But the Great Hall, as it was originally envisioned and built in 1844, had only that single stairway that came from, as I said, from the sidewalk all the way to the second floor. The only way into the building at that point in time, besides the access to the second floor, were two offices in the front. They each had separate doorways. So there was an office to the north, an office to the south, a solid wall that came across here, and that wall separated those two offices from what they call the Lyceum, which was the space that went from those offices to the rear room of the building. And that Lyceum was a gathering place for everybody in town to come talk about the politics of the day, gossip, that sort of thing. But the access to the Lyceum was from a doorway on this side of the building. So there were really only three rooms on this first floor. Those two offices, the Lyceum, and then the fourth space was the Great Hall on the second floor, and that was it. There were no toilets, there were no other storage spaces, there was nothing. It was just four, basically.
Now, did the building originally have any utilities, electricity, water, gas?
No, it didn't have any of that, and that's one of the reasons they were able to build it in 5 or 6 months. So none of that, all of the modern conveniences and code-compliant issues that Scott has to deal with and that we have to design for him, but no, they had none of that. In fact, I think they probably had, to the best of our research, they had whale oil lamps to provide illumination at night, so no utilities. Utilities came in the early 1900s, electricity and gas.
So for heat purposes, how did they?
The heating was provided by wood stoves. There were three that we are of, and you can see the remains of the masonry chimneys on this side of the building and into the north, and there's one as well on the rear of the building. But that was the only heat that they had.
So it was someone's job to stoke the stoves essentially, and cut the wood probably and keep those fires.
That's right. So, but a lot different than what we're going to have when we're through with this job.
Yeah. So Scott Southwick, the general foreman from NASA Construction on this project at Old City Hall, is here to talk to us a little bit about, Scott, looks like there was a fire in this building. What's going on with these charred beams?
There was evidence that there was a fire or maybe several different fires in the building, and evidenced by the beams that are in some of the joists that have been scarred and some of them replaced at some portion, but most likely from where they heated the building back in the day.
The old stoves Jim was just talking about, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
So do these have to be replaced?
The whole scheme of this is to remove all of the wood structure, but the plan was to salvage a lot of the floor joists because we want to put them back into the architectural integrity for some exposed ceilings.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some of the members being compromised, it's not going to make that feasible.
Was this dangerous? I mean, this is obviously has been like this for decades.
I don't think the charge to the point where where it compromised the beam to the point where it would make it, faulty. We haven't seen that, but there was some joists that had been replaced, so they probably at that point they probably thought they were compromised and they replaced them when the fire took place.
What was the initial reaction when you uncovered these? I'm just curious.
We were really surprised because we weren't expecting this, and the team wasn't expecting this, that we were going to find this, because the plan was to try to salvage all the joist material.
Sure. All right. Well, good luck with that. I'm sure it's a major undertaking. These steel columns that we see here, I understand these are not going to stay as part of the final project. Is that right?
That's correct. All the structure comes out just to the bare walls, but that was at a renovation sometime post 1920, like Jim had alluded to earlier.
Right. It's the first thing that struck me when I walk into the building, as it is right now, is how small it seems as compared to when it was finished with offices and walls. It doesn't feel as big as it did then, as it looks like right now.
That's kind of like a normal feeling. When you open it up, it looks a little smaller. Then we start putting it back together, and all of a sudden it gets its depth again.
Right. The actual footprint, though, is not changing.
It's not changing of this main building, no.
So Scott, looks like you've got a little tunnel system going on here in the foundation. What's the process here?
Well, the process of the underpinning is we tunnel under at certain increments so that we make sure we don't disturb the integrity of the base stone, and we tunnel under to the other side, dig down to an elevation that's been predetermined by the design team. We form it and we replace concrete, which is called underpinning. So we're actually putting a new foundation base underneath the building.
And the reason for that is?
Well, one of the reasons, we've dropped the slab in the basement level 12 inches to accommodate the new design, and we need to make sure we lock that bottom stone back into the integrity of the structural design.
It was just sitting on earth, right?
It is right now, correct.
And was that a common construction method?
In the day it was a common, but doesn't meet the intent of the code in today's standards.
Sure.
So we're bringing it up to standards.
Okay. And how long will this process take, do you think, to do the whole building?
We're thinking somewhere between 7 and 8 week process to do the whole building.
Okay. So the winter is really not hampering your efforts, it doesn't seem. There's lots of activity here. And
It doesn't hamper us to the point where we can't make progress, and we're not losing time. So we have the proper controls in place to meet cold weather concreting, and we're utilizing those practices.
Sure. And what eventually is the basement going to be used for? Why is it being lowered?
Down in the basement, the plan is to make a museum out of it, and there's some office space down there, but the design intent of it is just so we can make sure we can have room to put MEPs in. So the mechanicals, your lighting, your duct work, and sprinkler systems, and bring it up to code.
Well, we've made it upstairs to the Grand Hall here at Old City Hall as we continue our tour with Jim Edwards and Scott Southwick, and we're here to talk about what's going on upstairs. Jim, with the first impressions walking up those stairs, wow, it just hit you as how massive this Grand Hall really is.
Well, as you mentioned on the first floor, Joe, it seems much smaller than you originally remember it. When you get up into this space, the space just explodes, and it feels much larger than it used to. And I believe part of the reason that is, first of all, the space expands up into the truss areas, which nobody has ever seen before.
Right.
Again, since 1844 when they were building it, but also since the 1920s, maybe 1923, there was no exposure on the south side of the building. So these windows, which were originally part of the Great Hall, going from south wall to north wall, were part of this great space. So we had a building that went from the front to the back, one great space, a balcony behind us, up here, but the Great Hall was this space, window to window, front to back, and that is what we were replicating in this renovation project. So it does feel large, it does feel expansive, and it is going to be one fabulous space when we go through with it. I can guarantee you that, Joe.
Now, were these beams exposed originally?
No, they were not. Nope.
Will they be exposed in the new project?
No, they will not.
No.
It wouldn't be historic, and we don't feel that that's part of what the original intention of the architect was. So those will be covered in plaster and drywall. There'll be new lighting fixtures to replicate what we think were period pieces in the time. There was one of the historic elements we were trying to recreate is that, and Scott saw it in the demolition process, but there were the remnants of a large cornice, and we knew it was there. We took the profile of it when we were in the design process, and we are going to replicate that cornice detail in its entirety around the entire perimeter of this great space. So that's one of the elements that we're really looking forward to seeing happen when we get a little further along in the construction process.
Sure.
But we're going to try to get some of the original colors, and we have the exact profile. It's going to be handsome as heck.
Now, you mentioned a balcony. Now, what will that be used for? How will it be accessed?
That will be used for this grand stair, which we have behind us here. Will again, this double sweep of the stair will be also going from the second floor to the balcony.
Okay.
So that's how that access will work, and that will be used for overflow occasions and ceremonial situations.
So seating up there for the
There's seating up there for under certain conditions.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. And as I understand, the well, as it's called, for the city officials to sit, is going to encompass the whole back wall of
Yes,
City Hall?
it is, Joe.
Okay. So originally, that's how it was.
That's exactly how it was. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a little different configuration. They weren't but based on today's city charter and the number of city councils that we have, we accommodate all of those. And yes, that will be up against that wall. And as you know, the original council chambers, the wall was not at this rear old granite wall of the building. It was forward of that, and there
Right.
were passageways and stairways and
Yes.
that sort of thing behind it. So this is, we really have expanded the space, and it's going to, having it come back to its original proportions and breadth and grandeur is something that we're all looking forward to seeing. So.
Scott, can you talk a little bit about, I notice in the corners, the rear corners of the building here, you've got metal braces that have been attached to the original granite. What's that all about?
When we exposed the granite wall, Joe, we found that during renovations, for the addition on the back portion of the building in the early 1900s, they didn't put a header stone in to carry the stone, so the stone actually dropped a little bit and pushed the wall out a little bit on the corners. So what we had to do was go in and we had to find a way to reattach that corner so we could keep the structural integrity of the outside shell. So we worked with the structural engineer, our mason, and our team and Jim's team, and we come up with the design for the straps to tie it back together.
And will those stay
They
permanently?
will be, but they will be covered.
Okay, so they won't be seen,
They
but
won't be
they'll be there permanently.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, Jim, is that addition coming back in the back of the building at some point?
Yes, it is. Not certainly in that form.
Right.
That the addition on the back will be mostly a glass structure, and it will not be the kind of glass that you see on City Hall Annex, which is a reflective glass. This will be a transparent glass, and it will be something that allows transparency. It will allow people to look from within to without very clearly, not only into the new park area, which is going to be on the south side of the building, but also into the cemetery, the Hancock Burial Ground, which is in the process of being renovated
Right.
and upgraded. So, but one of the other intentions of this glass annex or addition to the back of the building is that it will allow people from the outside to look and be able to view the granite of the back of this building, which has been hidden from view for almost 100 years. So being able to see that rough-hewn granite as opposed to the smooth
Yes.
sides of the building was one of the design objectives. So we look forward to seeing how Scott builds this glass addition for us. But that's one of the keys to this whole thing, because it's going to be such a transparent piece that allows viewing of the rear of this building, which hasn't been able to happen for a long time.
It's one of the first things I noticed when I came over today. Is look at there is that dark Quincy granite that is written about and talked about so often, and then there it is in its raw form right there.
Exactly right, Joe. So we want to demonstrate that in all its beauty and grandeur and strength.
So how will you, kind of combine the old and the new? Obviously, glass structure is modern feeling, looking.
Well, that's one of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to have something that is a contemporary piece coming up against a historic piece.
Okay.
We wanted to be sensitive to the fact that this is a really solid piece of granite historical architecture, and this glass box, if you want to call it, is intended to respect that and let the existing architecture, the existing stone, be viewed in its, let's call it its original might and strength. But this glass box encloses certain functions that have to happen, entry experiences and that sort of thing, a gathering space, but it allows the building to be what it is. And we thought that was the much more sympathetic way to do it than to create an enclosure that was all dark and granite and try to replicate what was here before. We just didn't want to do that.
What will be the main entrance to City Hall once it's completed, Jim? How will people get into the building?
The main functional entrance will be in the new addition.
Okay.
There'll be an elevator in there and another stairway which will be code conforming, and so there'll be handicapped accessible toilets. But we also have a ceremonial and functional entrance which we view as being very important once this new park is built in front between City Hall and the United First Parish Church. So we wait to see how that whole dynamic works out as the park becomes built and becomes used. But we have two really important entrances to this building, and we see both of them being very functional.
Yeah. Scott, from this point on, can you kind of take us through what will be happening in terms of process? You're pretty much done with demo now, is that right?
Well, we're about 80% done with the demo. The floor systems still have to come out. Basically, we're going to be underpinning the building. When the masons get done with the repair work, we'll start putting foundations in, and then we'll start setting the iron on the addition and interior of the building. After the steel frame is put up, we have all wood joist and floor assemblies that come up to build the first and second floor back up. So that's what we're heading into, and we're getting real close to getting ready to start some foundation work here, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay. And, total timeline for this project right now?
Right now we're on schedule to complete on the 23rd of December of this year.
Okay, so it'll be an early Christmas present for the city.
It will be.
And in terms of the outside structure, the roof structure, the walls, will they be changed at all, cleaned, renovated at any point?
Well, the outside of the building obviously is the main focus is going to be, we'll clean the stonework, but we're going to be putting a new roof on, new slate roof will be put on top of the building.
And when will you kind of call this building, I don't know, weather tight, if you will, or completely enclosed?
Weather tightness, we're probably looking, I'd say sometime probably late spring, early summer.
Okay, and then utilities after that?
Yeah.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome, Joe.
Thanks,
and
Joe.
It really makes me happy to be part of this particular undertaking. And I compliment the city, the mayor, community preservation folks for allowing this really noteworthy project to happen. This is, a city is part of, it's people, it's buildings. That's what makes Quincy such an important place. And this is just a fabulous piece of architecture designed by the father of the Quincy granite industry. We're so fortunate to be able to put it back in the condition where it should be and have it be a vital piece of Quincy government for generations to come. So Scott and I are both very fortunate to be able to be part of this.
Very fortunate.
Well, we look forward to maybe in the springtime getting another update from you gentlemen and see how the progress has been coming.
We look forward to that, Joe. Thanks for
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. Thank you.